Welcome back to the TBR Podcast. We're your hosts.
I'm Kelcie.
And I'm Bree.
And we have our very special guest again, Lucky, our Hunger Games expert.
Mm-hmm.
And if you guys want to check out all of her deep dives on Hunger Games and a bunch of your if you want to check out her deep dives on Hunger Games and all your other favorite worlds, check out her links below, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. So please check her out. She has great videos. And if you're here, this is part 2 of our debrief Hunger Games
in preparation for the release of Sunrise on the Reaping.
Thank you.
Yes.
And so here, if you didn't see part 1, go check that out. We'll link that below as well.
Mm-hmm.
We really went into the politics and
the messages,
symbolism, all of that good stuff that we see in the Hunger Games. And this one, we're really going into Sunrise on the Reaping, the parallels, thoughts,
connections, what's going to happen, who's going to be in it.
Actually purely going off my fan theories.
No, please, that sounds so right. That's it. That's true.
Yeah.
That's canon.
So, diving straight into this here.
Thank you.
I want to talk about the parallels before we talk about Sunrise.
Okay.
The parallels that we see in Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes and within the original Hunger Games trilogy in the first place. Okay. So I feel like one of the most prominent things we talked about a little bit in part 1 was the symbolism with the Mockingjays and even like the names and the, have Greek mythology really wrapped up into a lot of the names, Coriolanus, Sejanus. I mean, even Katniss, her plant being Sagittarius, who is the archer, all of that good stuff. And you have Lucy Gray and the Covey and their names, which if you read the excerpt or whatever it's called for the upcoming Sunrise on the Reaping, there's a little maybe potential connection there. But we'll get to that in a minute. So some of the connections that I made when I was reading the book, and these are just theories, right?
Right.
Like, not confirmed.
Okay.
But I know that a lot of people talk about Maude Ivory and how there's a potential familial connection between her and Katniss.
Yeah.
Because we know that Maude never forgets a song, and she knows where the lake is and the lake house and about edible plants and how to survive off the land, which we know that Katniss learned from her father, and presumably her father learned from his family,
aka
could have been
Ivory.
Maude Ivory.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on that, both of you?
To be totally honest, I've kind of been weighing the possibility. I'm like, is this book going to imply that Katniss and Haymitch are biologically related in any way? I don't think so. I don't think so. But I do think it is very likely that one of Maude Ivory's descendants is Lenore Dove, or that there is going to be a I do believe that we're going to get essentially confirmation on whether or not Katniss's dad is or is not Covey, because at that point there would be very few members of the Covey left. I wouldn't imagine the majority of them had children.
Right.
The ones that did would be very few, so it'd be reduced to just a handful of people, maybe 6, 7, 8. So I'm very curious to see the direction that that'll go, but I do believe that we would get confirmation on that. And so far I am leaning yes to the idea that Katniss may be at least partially descended of the Covey, just because I feel it it very nicely ties in with the story. I think also, forgive me if I'm wrong, but there's 3 female members of the Covey counting Lucy Gray, right? There's Lucy Gray, there's Maude Ivory, and there's Barb Azure, right? Am I missing anybody? I believe Barb Azure is canonically a lesbian. So if there are any, I mean, I suppose the boys, like Tam Amber, could have children as well, but if there's going to be a Maude Ivory descendant, it has to be. I mean, if there's going to be a Covey descendant, I feel like you would come from Maude Ivory.
Would have to be.
Yeah. So the other known members of the Covey are Tam Amber, Carmen Clade, and Billy Taupe.
Yeah. So Billy Taupe dead. Tam Amber and Clark Carmen. If you squint and are completely delusional like I am, you can pretend that they're found in the original trilogy, like the Goat Man, the man that knows how to play violin at Finnick's wedding. Because to be totally frank, who would know how to play violin in those circumstances? Who has the time? Who would know how to even begin? So both of those characters, this is just me actually purely going off my fan theories.
No, please. That sounds so like that's it. That's true.
Yeah.
That's canon.
Don't take this as gospel, but Tam, Amber, and Claire Carmine, if these characters can be interpreted as them, are described as solitary. They're not described as having families, wives, children. So Billy Tup dead, Claire Carmine, Tam, Amber, loners, Barb Azure, lesbian, hopefully lives happily ever after with her girlfriend. That truly just leaves Maud Ivory as the one that could produce a potential Covey descendant. So I do feel like we are going to get hard confirmation.
Yep. Oh my God.
I know, which I'm so excited. So you did bring up Lenore Dove, who we know is Hamish's girlfriend. And so people have seen, okay, it's the two names. Dove, that's like dove gray, or like, dove is like kind of white, like a color, right? And then Lenore, if you look really deep, Edgar Allan Poe,
right?
The Raven,
yes,
which we actually have some quotes. So, like from my books, surcease the sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here for forevermore. And like this is like a lost love. It's and which we know the outcome of Lenore Dove, which is she's murdered.
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting coming into Sunrise on the Reaping, because we do know Hamish's fate, right?
Yeah.
And we do know a little bit about his games. So I'm so curious how much of each we're going to see.
Yeah.
Because we already do know a little bit. While Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, we came in only knowing Coriolanus's.
Yeah.
And maybe even Tigris. But no, who's Lucy Gray?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's Janet. Who?
Yeah.
So, and that's what made it, so much more.
I know a lot of people are kind of speculating we might see Plutarch as like a potential POV, as like a mentor or somewhere in there. So we might get like his story from how he went from, being on the game side of it to, kind of being like a spy for the rebel, So we might see his origins or something. I don't know.
What do you think, Lucky?
I think that it's very possible that we see Plutarch. I was originally of the opinion that there would be multiple POVs, but upon the release of the synopsis, I don't get that impression. I do think that we're going to stick with Hamish for the majority of the book, but I do think that if Plutarch Heavensby is introduced, there's a handful of possibilities. You could be Hamish's mentor, because the mentor system prior to them being made victors, the mentor system was rich, affluent, capital students, academy students. Very up Plutarch's alleyway. Yeah. I think it's also possible that he's affiliated with the games. I think it's very possible that he sort of like plants ideas in Hamish's head on how to sway public opinion. Hamish is described in Catching Fire. I believe that's the book where Katniss sees his game for the first time, as being very brazen, very defiant, a very difficult person to work with, for lack of a better term. So this could just be due to pure rage at being reaped on your birthday and being torn away from everything you know and love. You don't even get to have dinner with your girlfriend. But I'm kind of entertaining the possibility that before Katniss was eyed, Hamish was viewed as the one that potentially could have triggered everything that needed to be triggered.
Because I think I also saw something where, since they're going to be highlighting like propaganda in this as well, in like a different sense, that maybe they're going to like show how Hamish was kind of like made to look a certain way for the games for some reason. Because I know he ends up like, didn't they say he doesn't take any of the gifts or something like that? Or, but I feel like they're going to make him same weight in like a symbol, or like, I don't know, highlight on him.
Yes,
like with
I think
propaganda.
we'll see, like, flickers of the rebellion, but I don't think like the plan is going to be discussed in extensive detail. I think it's more so like a seed that they'll plant.
Yeah, definitely. And then just going back again to Ballad and possible connections between the three. So something that I noticed while reading the books was Snow's apartment that he lives in, he has the rooftop garden that his grandmother has the roses on and everything. And the way that it's described as being 12 floors, the garden rooftop, and like the exterior having the wide streets, I'm under the impression that Snow, because we know Snow likes to use his background to influence how the games have transformed into what we see with Katniss's games. And I think that he turned it into the tribute center.
Yes.
I thought that was canon. When we were first talking about this, I thought that was canon. I thought it was like, oh, the 12 floors, the thing, like, oh yeah, that's the tribute center.
But we looked it up and it
was like, no, it's a theory. I'm like, I thought that's what it was.
It's canon in our hearts. But I do think that I do think that this will confirm whether or not it legitimately is. But I feel like Susan Collins is very purposeful with her details. If it was just one thing, like, oh, the building has 12 floors, then I'd be like, okay, it's a bit more understandable.
Yeah.
But there's so many. The large space at the basement, the 12 floors, the rose garden. There's just a little too much overlap, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, no, it is.
Right.
It is.
Bree says it is.
So it is. Yeah.
Yeah. But like, so I'm curious because obviously we're missing a big chunk between Lucy Gray and Haymitch's story. And we know that Snow kind of has taken power and he's slowly begun transforming the games. So I'm curious what has been implemented up to Haymitch's games versus what we did see in, the Hunger Games.
Yeah.
So like how similar is it going to be? Because in Ballad, it was extremely different. I mean, you like saw
bare bones
and like you saw like the arena, the kind of cornucopia type look of the broken stones, and how again Snow uses what he sees and what he knows to make these games what they are. You have the cornucopia with all the things in the one spot, and so I'm just really curious what transformations have occurred.
Because like, how is it not going to feel repetitive? Even though like, I'll still eat up everything when it comes to the games. But like, how is she going to, or it's both ways, the book and the movie, going to come off like its own individual? Because like, in Ballad, that was just bare bones, the origins. Obviously, we see in the trilogy how futuristic and they have all these different types of things. So like, what's going to make it different with his games to make it feel individual?
Other than the fact that it's a quarter quell.
Yeah.
And
it's just going to be more, but like, what else is like,
Right.
Reading the description of Haymitch's games has always given me the impression these games were intended as the ultimate showstopper.
Yeah.
The largest, most expensive arena, an endless barrage of mutts, technologies the likes of which had likely never been incorporated in games before, the largest number of tributes, the largest number of everything. And I think part of the reason that they go all out for the 50th year is because that would be the year the second generation, not the children that directly experienced the war, or even like those children's children, but the grandchildren would start maturing into adulthood, people that were completely isolated from the horrors of the early games, completely isolated from the horrors of the First Rebellion. Are those people are going to be a little bit less receptive towards the tactics that have worked on their parents. So in order to ensure you have good control over them, you need to create the most outlandish display of cruelty and violence these children have witnessed in their entire lives. And I think it's very effective in the way that it accomplishes that.
Yeah.
Well, we were also talking about, because when we were doing research on this, I was like, remind me what the 25th quarter, like that game was.
Yeah.
And it was that they had a vote.
Yeah.
For the tributes going in, and I'm just like, shit. I was like, I would definitely be voted in. Someone say this is
I would be voting you in.
And then I'm like, okay, y'all hate
me. Yeah, but I think that was such a great way, to really be like, you're gonna vote for your own people, like to turn against each other. Like, y'all have to vote for the tribute. So I think that was a perfect way to do it here. So for the 50th, having
this had
double, hey, give credit where credit's due. So like, for this one, like, what are we gonna see? Like, oh, this is where the origin of something, because like 50, what is it? The next one is like 10, 15 years later. the games from the 50th.
Wait, what?
So
for where the Hunger Games is?
Yeah.
So the Hunger Games is the 74th.
Oh, okay, so like 20 years later. So then, like, are we gonna see any like origins of technology that we see? Because we saw back,
Well, that's what it sounds like what Lucky was saying with the mutts and the bigger arena, and yeah. But I am curious, like what have we seen, or like maybe we saw earlier versions of these in the past. And my specific question is for the electric force field that's around the arena, because we know that that's the big win for Haymitch is using that against his opponents. And so I'm curious, like, was this implemented in past games yet, or was this the first time?
Your question was
the electrical field.
Yeah.
So I don't know if our expert here knows if this has been used or not in the games.
It's interesting. I actually never considered that before, but I'm willing to bet actually yes. Just because of how bonkers snow goes when that thing is twisted against the Capitol.
Yeah.
I could imagine the way the tributes are described as responding implies to me, at least to me, that these sort of extravagant, like niche, like perfectly cultivated microbiomes have not been previously implemented, that there haven't been like these previous spheres for the games to be held in. They're described as being stunned by the scenery. They've never been in a place like this. They can't orient themselves well. I wouldn't be surprised if there were a couple shock deaths of them straight up walking into the force field. Because I mean, there's always the possibility Haymitch sees a tribute die that way in previous games. But right now, my impression is that a handful of tributes die that way, or Haymitch perhaps loses a person he loves that way, and then realizes that it's reflective. Possibly he throws something at it, it ricochets back. But I feel that force field is going to be a consistent presence, for lack of a better term, which a force field is intended to be, but you know what I mean.
But like we're gonna see like little implements of that whole
But you know what's funny is that, like, you saying this, I'm like, wait, don't we know though? Like, doesn't he like throw some rocks and the rocks come back? And you know what I'm thinking about?
What are you thinking about?
I'm thinking about the fan-made film of Haymitch's games that's like on YouTube, which was so well done. And like I think it's Mainstay Pro. I don't know. I'll like have it on screen. But they made so many Hunger Games like films. They did Finnick and Annie and they did Haymitch. And I'm pretty sure that like
I think I've seen all this before.
I know, like, wait. So like I wonder how close they were.
Yeah.
You know?
Probably pretty close, huh?
When Sunrise on the Reaping, the movie releases, it's just an HD version.
You literally
only like 15 minutes long.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
How did you think they were able to push the release date up so fast?
Right.
No, but like seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that Suzanne probably went up to her boy Francis and was like, "Look, I'm writing this book, so be ready to
get ready."
This is important. Yeah.
I think it's very possible that she wrote the book and the screenplay simultaneously. That's honestly the only thing I could think of.
Because there's no way it would be ready that quickly after.
Yeah. No, she definitely did. Yeah. That has to be.
Yeah.
For sure. So, I know that we talked a little bit about the possibility of the multi-POVs with Plutarch and Haymitch, but then I know that another POV that people were possibly thinking about was the career districts tribute, specifically the one that makes it to the end with Haymitch, because in the end it's between him and a District 1 girl. I believe it's District 1. Yeah, and so there's that possibility, and other people think that there's a possibility that we'll see a POV from someone in the districts, just because of this whole idea of the propaganda and the implicit submission and everything, that you're going to see all the different sides that's coming. But I do see like where you're coming from, Lucky, with the way that the synopsis is written, and then even seeing what has come out, like that excerpt. The excerpt being first person Haymitch. Yeah. So I'm curious if it will be for like just Haymitch.
I think of multi POV like books and stuff. Have they ever been in first person? right?
So
I mean, there still could be a possibility.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the part of the reason I'm hesitant, because originally I did entertain the possibility of it being multi-POV, but multi-POV books are infamously incredibly difficult to adapt. And I don't see a lot of scenarios in which a hard POV cut wouldn't feel like very awkward in terms of like where it took place. I think it's very possible that in terms of the propaganda, Haymitch is going to, what I'm hoping for this book, this might be my own wishful thinking actually, that we discover more tangible information about the other districts. I think because of just the sheer number of people Haymitch is going to be interacting with, he's going to get good insight as to how each district is specifically manipulated. But that might be my own wishful thinking, so we'll see.
I love that, yeah. Because I know another thing that we're trying to think of is, who are we going to see? What familiar names are we going to see? Are we going to see Tigress as a stylist?
Right.
Because I don't know if we know exactly when she stopped being one. So I don't know if she still is during Haymitch's games. Right. And then, are we going to see, like we said, Plutarch? Are we going to, how much Snow are we going to see? Is he really involved as much as he's involved in Katniss's games? Right. So I'm curious about that.
Yeah.
And like past victors, because we know that in Catching Fire, Haymitch has kind of made some connections with some of these victors. Yeah. And so I'm curious if we'll see the beginning sparks of that. I know when you and I were talking, we were talking about specifically Chaff. Yeah. Because they seem to be quite close in Catching Fire.
So they have all the winners, we've all gotten to know each other really well. So are we going to see that in here? Or is that just like over time they've, grown close?
Right. Yeah.
So you know what my ultimate gag would be?
What?
Everybody wants the name of Mrs. Everdeen because she's Madge Undersea's best friend. Not Madge Undersea, what am I saying?
Maisley.
Yeah. She's Maisley, what's her last name? Blanking. It's not Donna, is it?
That's...
Okay, regardless. Maisley's best friend is Mrs. Everdeen. I think it would be hilarious if Haymitch is watching the scene and goes, and then Maisley's best friend, whose name I don't remember.
No, please, I would love that.
Oh my god, people would actually throw the book across the room.
No, yeah, that's happening.
No, because that's so true, because it's Mrs. Everdeen and Mr. Everdeen, and we don't know their names.
Yeah. No, we're finding it out.
Yes,
where are we?
Just like I actually keep having this thought, and I'm like, I would be so gagged if she actually did that.
Be. Yeah. No, I love that.
Yeah, no, because like, are we going to see them in it? Because you make a good point with her mom was literally the best friend of a tribute that is going into the games during this. So, like, how much are we going to see? I'm just like,
no,
so curious.
Yes.
And then we also are curious. So we know that Suzanne Collins, the way that she writes these books, is in a 3-act structure. And I'm curious how she's going to, I'm assuming she's going to keep using that, right?
Yeah.
That's safe to assume. I wonder how she's going to use that 3-act structure to tell Haymitch's story, because we know from the snippet we've gotten that we see him on Reaping Day.
Yeah.
Which is very similar to Katniss, right? And so are we going to see the full length of his games or just the main points? Because I really think that, and maybe this is just me kind of wishing, I want to see the aftermath.
I have a feeling they might follow that same before the games, after. Yeah. Just because, like, I know, like, after that whole big impact with his family and all that, and him getting into, like, alcoholism, like, I feel like we have to see that kind of spiral as well.
Right, yeah.
I feel our 3-act structure is going to be more closely modeled after Ballad than it is the original 3. In that you have that long, extended period of time where you discuss the aftermath. I'm also under the impression, actually, that Haymitch's games are somewhat fast. Just based off the description that we received in Catching Fire, it seems that a huge bulk of the tributes just die automatically because so many things in that arena are designed to be poisonous.
Right.
Flowers, the insects, everything. So I think his games, despite the number of people, are going to be relatively swift, and then we have that long extended period of time where we focus on the aftermath, the punishment.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if there was a short, like a few chapters focusing on Haymitch's experience as a mentor, just like every sunrise that he witnesses after.
Oh,
but like
that gave me chills.
So would it be the first act would be reaping into games or whole games?
I think reaping into games because
then games, maybe finishing of the games, a little bit the aftermath, and then the last one would be
like kind of time jumps
aftermath with being a mentor now.
Yes, I would be very interested to see if that was the route they went. And personally, my petty little prediction, I think the book is going to conclude with Haymitch waking up the morning of Katniss's reaping.
Oh, that's so good.
Oh,
okay, if you don't, you need to make a whole new book writing this version.
Oh,
that's good.
Oh
that's
no, I could never show up, Miss Collins. Yes, I do think that is going to be like the last sentence, him waking up on the sunrise of Katniss's reaping.
Oh, that would hit really hard.
Because like you're thinking like, obviously this is his story, it's, you know, the one-off, so it's like, how are we gonna just tie it up? But like waking up right into oh my god, that's good. No, that's good.
Well, I'm curious, and maybe I'm just like forgetting a bunch of stuff about Haymitch.
Right.
But we know with Finnick that after he won his games, they exploited him.
Yes.
And then they were trying to do that with Joanna as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious if they tried to do anything with Haymitch and if we're going to see that.
I don't get the impression the Capitol received Haymitch as a particularly desirable person in that regards.
Mm-hmm.
It seems that he was, how do I phrase this? A very antagonistic figure towards the majority of, or not necessarily the citizenry, but towards the elite. So I don't think they would market him for this purpose. I think the execution of his family in their eyes is sufficient enough. Okay. They're content to watch him make a spectacle of himself in terms of, you know, his bouts of alcoholism, perhaps potential morphling use, but they're not really, I don't think they're interested in integrating him or like utilizing him as a product in that regard. He's more so like a clown to them almost.
Yeah, true. Did we, and like, hey man, y'all don't warn me, did we see like the Victor's tour in Ballad, or like, when did that start?
I don't think the Victor's tour happened in Ballad. I don't think there was a tour. They just sort of put Lucy Gray on a train and said, "Congrats, kid, you survived," and sent her back to 12.
So then are we going to see like the first tour? Because like I know we talked about before, like, you know, Haymitch goes to, I think it's like District 11 or something, and he goes in the tower and, you know, he's like, oh, I know all the spots, or I know how to find a place where we can talk. And that's where he takes Katniss and them. So like, are we going to see him trying to run away, trying to find a spot? Like, do we see that first actual like Victor's tour?
True, because we know that with Mags, who is the Victor after Lucy Gray, that's when they introduced the Victor's village for the first time.
Right.
So in my head, I would assume that like they could potentially have created the Victor's tour for her as well.
Or it's just that's the first thing for there, and then here
it's
might
just
be
a continuation off of that. But I'm not sure.
You know, I think there's actually quite a strong possibility because one of the important images that Susan Collins has mentioned, and I think it's literally on the cover of Ballad as well as a crown.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm under the impression that Haymitch gets like a toy crown from a sibling as like an arena token. And in my head, this is all just based off of like tiny, teeny little snippets.
No, but I'm eating it up.
But in my head, crown is either a gift from Lenore Dove or his younger sibling. And it's treated as this sort of like mocking gesture, like the people's prince or things of that nature. Just like something that's repeatedly used to mock the concept of a victor, to mock like even the desire for victory in of itself that eventually becomes extremely ironic when he wins the games and is likely forced on a victory tour or something of that nature.
Yeah.
Could he get it from like while he's doing the tour to like mock?
It's also possible, yes.
Yeah.
Like very possible.
To try to mock him like, oh my god, I don't want to see this Victor like here, you know?
I'm also,
I believe, oh go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say I'm also curious if this is the first victory tour, has his family already been slaughtered?
Right.
And does he know? Or does he does he go into this victory tour knowing that his family's dead and he has to do put on a face?
Right. But like,
would he? Right.
Yeah.
So his reaction, or they have been slaughtered, but he doesn't know, or they are still alive, and then they're slaughtered right after his tour.
Yeah. I would personally assume they die before the tour.
That's what I'm kind of thinking.
Yeah, because Haymitch winning the games that way is a very like open symbol of defiance. That's something that is going to energize and inspire the people.
Right.
So in order to effectively accomplish what you want to accomplish through a victory tour, I think Haymitch needs to be in that sort of shattered state. He has to be a person that doesn't live up to the potential the district's perceived in him.
Yes.
And in doing that, you sort of crush whatever momentum was built by that act in the first place.
Trying to make him docile now. Because if he did that, they didn't kill his family yet, would he still be more like, oh, F all of this, and like on the tour and not really doing it? But then, boom, we killed your entire family. Like, you're just beaten down.
Right.
Just, we'll just go along with it now.
I'm also curious, at what point did Haymitch turn to alcohol or other substances? Because obviously we know Haymitch in Katniss's games is like falling off the stage drunk, and this is his way of coping with the PTSD. But at what point?
Like, this may be a bit cynical, but I would say immediately.
Like, I was kind of thinking.
Instantaneously. And part of the reason that I'm inclined to say this, aside from this, soul-crushing reality of losing every single person you love, because you stayed alive, just to add an extra cherry on top, is that Katniss really likes drinking when she does it. Like, she I think she drinks twice. She drinks by accident when she first goes to the Capitol and she's having dinner. She doesn't understand what wine is, but she describes like herself really enjoying the feeling, likely because it's been the first time she's been able to relax in years. And she starts blacking out alongside Haymitch when the theme of the reaping is announced, because she knows she's going back. And then, PETA, swoops in to save the day, tells them to sober up, get up. But because that seems to be like kind of like a default coping mechanism, and also because District 12 is heavily inspired by Appalachia, and Appalachian towns are unfortunately very heavy, that tends to be a very consistent source of coping because there are so few other resources available. I think that there is definitely some commentary to be had there about that being the only available form of like relief Haymitch has.
Yes.
That's a great point. And okay, I love that you've brought up the parallels between the drinking between Katniss and Haymitch, because I want to talk about the parallels between Katniss and Haymitch.
Yeah.
We know that both of their fathers died in a coal mining accident. We know now with that little excerpt that Haymitch is also a hunter, just like Katniss. I don't know if it's in the same way.
Right.
They also have younger siblings that they seem to be, obviously they love their sibling.
Yeah.
And they both, we know that they lose their siblings.
Yeah.
And they win the games.
So really, Haymitch could have been Katniss if he didn't go into drinking. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, or like the same parallel. Like, if I didn't get into drinking, if I didn't let it crush my spirits, I could have been Katniss, or vice versa.
Right.
I'm actually going to flip this a little bit. I'd argue that Katniss could have been Haymitch, because a big reason because Katniss has that impulsive urge to defy. Katniss has that rebellious streak. The only thing that keeps it in place is Haymitch essentially telling her multiple times to sit the fuck down. So I believe Haymitch is going to be, not that I believe Haymitch is the force that he himself needed during those games. He's the social savvy. He's the person that understands the way the Capitol actually politically operates. So I think we're going to see the most extreme mistakes Katniss could have potentially made through Haymitch, and how he learns from them in the future.
Okay, so I want to present this as well.
Okay.
So we can see the parallels between Sid and Prim.
Okay.
We can see the parallels between Haymitch and Katniss.
Right.
Are we going to see the parallels between Maisley and PETA?
Interesting. What stands out to me is that just the synopsis implies that he doesn't like Maisley at all.
Right.
He calls her the most stuck-up girl in town, and there's, to be totally frank, very few other characters that could be. I think it's interesting to view her as a PETA parallel. She's a merchant child that comes from a highly elevated social background, has a very like tearful well, actually Peter doesn't really have a tearful departure with his family, but
Right. But like
is
a
likely
softer.
is likely going to be much more visibly distraught than Haymitch would allow himself to be seen.
Yeah.
I think it's very possible that Haymitch would view her with the same sort of paranoia that Katniss did.
Absolutely.
Like look at her cry, no doubt to manipulate the like that, like that sort of
Yes.
could see like an alliance being forged in training, like just that general softening. I think honestly, because there's two other tributes described, a compulsive odds maker.
Yeah.
That compulsive odds maker, I think, is going to be our key to seeing how the games have previously operated, like games 10 through 50. Because an odds maker is a person that places bets. So my impression of this person is that they're going to be like, oh, but like in the 38th games, X, Y, and D did such and such and such and survived or died or something of that nature.
Yeah.
But the other one is a person that's supposed to be akin to a little sister to him. So I'm thinking like a little girl, like 12 or 13.
So like a Rue.
Like a Rue-like figure.
Oh. So like
I mean, the odds maker could be a girl as well, but I'm under the impression that
yeah.
Yes.
So then,
just for the sake of a Rue parallel. Yes.
Right. Yeah, because then I'm also thinking the end of the games, it's Haymitch versus career. And at the end of Katniss, it's Katniss versus Cato, who's a career. And so, like, I don't know it. But again, with Haymitch, we know he doesn't have a PETA who's, relying on him or anything. Because at that point, Maisley's dead.
Yeah.
We can, assume. And then with Katniss, she has PETA there as, like, support, if you want to say. I don't know. I think that's interesting, like the showdowns. Like I'm curious how the showdown between this career and Haymitch really went. Like what was the conversation? Because we know the conversation between Cato and them and how Cato's like this is like all I have. Like I have to win. And like I don't know, it's just really interesting.
Yes. We usually have like a career breaking point in the previous movies. I'm curious to see if this is the direction that'll go because from every description that we see, that career is under the impression they're about to win.
Yeah.
So I don't think they'd be groveling. I don't think they'd be repentant. They might be frantic. They might be, they might be saying something along those lines, like, I have to win, blah, blah, blah. But I think it's possible we might see like the complete opposite of what we've previously witnessed from the career. Somebody that fully embodies the propaganda the Capitol has spewed, that's sort of reveling in this image. And then Haymitch literally axing it, cutting it down right as it's speaking. Not like that the career isn't it, but just like the image,
Yeah. Culture. Layers upon layers upon layers.
No. Dang. Okay. What do we think? Does Haymitch have that we know of like a specific weapon? Because, we have Katniss, who obviously has the bow and arrows. Lucy Gray, I think of her voice as a weapon. So do we know what Haymitch, because yes, he's smart, he's intelligent, but is that like going to be his weapon, is his smarts? You know what I mean?
Haymitch has always struck me as a scrapper in the movies. He's a very efficient grappler. He's even when drunk, and that stands out at me because when you're drunk, your reflexes are slowed. To be honest, I'm under the impression that he's handy with anything he gets he gets access to, likely a knife, but I don't think he would have access to like a hard formal weapon like a bow or anything like that. Just making good use of things that you can swing, things that you can stab. But also Haymitch does not strike me as the type that is actively going to be hunting other tributes.
Right. So his, I think, would just be his mind, like his strategy, problem solving. We'll just see that kind of side of him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know, like, do you ever fan cast? Like, do you have any, people you're like, oh, I really want to see them,
They have anti-fan casts.
Let's hear it.
Even better.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Disclaimer, beloved audience. I don't remember the names of any actors right now. I'm blanking on every single actor that has ever appeared in anything. So don't diss me. Anyways, what is Walker Schobel. That's a great kid. Awesome kid. He's a great actor in Percy Jackson. I don't want to see him in the Hunger Games. I don't want to see him as Haymitch.
Like, he's too baby, which I know, but I mean, it could be because I think he's now 16, 17?
He's 16, so he is the correct age. He has the correct appearance, but it's more so the general like impression I get from his acting. He's not a bad actor, but there's a very specific type of character he commonly plays. And I can understand why people could see a Haymitch archetype from this character, because the character he usually plays is like a snarky, somewhat sardonic, tongue-in-cheek adolescent. But I don't think he has like that grit. Like, there's a lot of pain behind like Haymitch's like jabs and jabs. He's not snarky for the sake of snarkiness. So I feel it'd be just a bit too hammy with like an actor like that.
I can see that.
Maybe he's cast, maybe he completely defies my expectations. But whenever people kept going Walker Schobel, I'm like, pick a different blonde. I don't want Walker Schobel.
What?
You like it?
Dang, when you think about it, but then also like no. But
see,
that's my controversial one, because a lot of people think he would be awesome for the role. I didn't want Mike Feist. Is that how you say his name?
Yes.
Great in Challengers. I think he's a little too old for the role, but I would definitely not be opposed to seeing him in the movie, like as a game maker or something else. I just think for Haymitch, no. Right now.
No, I agree.
Yeah. For Haymitch, honestly, I want it to be somebody completely unknown.
That's literally what I was about to
gonna
say.
be. Yeah.
I feel like, you know, what was so great about all of these classic movies, like the original ones, like, yes, you had Josh Hutcherson, who, you know, grew up in the movies. We know him, Little Manhattan, Bridge of Terabithia.
Yeah.
But, you know, we have Jennifer Lawrence, who
came from indie films.
Right. Yeah. Like, she had Winter Bone, which I think was the one that really got her on the map. But other than that, it was just a couple things here and there. And this is like, you know,
skyrocketed them,
which I love. And like, even Rachel Zegler, like, I mean, girl just came off the map
and was like, boom,
with West Side Story.
Yeah.
But even her, I mean, she hasn't done a lot at that point. You know, like that's been, you know, profound, other than like West Side Story.
Yeah.
And for West Side Story, she was directly, if I remember the story correctly, she was directly cast by Steven Spielberg.
Yes.
Who does that happen to? Who does that happen to? Like, scout it out.
Which is why I love her. Yeah. And I hate her.
That's gonna be you. Don't worry.
Yes, living the dream.
I'm an actor. But yeah, I would love to have someone who, like maybe isn't a actor yet.
Right. I think I have some, smaller roles or just brand fresh and new.
Well, I know a very popular fan cast for Snow is it Witch Sutherland? Because it's
I just seen that.
His son. It starts with a K. His name starts with a K.
Kiefer.
So,
yes. Kiefer Sutherland. What do you think of that one?
I think that's very appropriate. I think Kiefer's a good actor. He obviously looks exactly like his dad would have looked at the age. He's about the right age Snow would have been too.
Yeah.
I mean, I love, like, but like, I think for this one, I think that would be the best possible choice for Snow, at least in my humble opinion.
Absolutely. I also agree. Oh, bless you. What do you think though, Bree?
No, I would love him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You love him.
Yeah.
I think it would also be like, I think it would also be like, just personally, like a nice way to pay homage to his dad, who was such like an iconic franchise.
Like, here's a younger one. Well, come on.
Carrying on the torch, so to speak. Yeah.
No, I would love that.
So I know that we mentioned a little bit of a possibility of seeing Tigress, whether it's just like a little bit or maybe she's a larger playing in here. Do we think that we'll see, like, if we do see her, at what point in her body modifications will she be at? And then do we have a fan cast?
I think
for this?
I think she's already started. I'm under the impression that at the point this happens, their relationship is already like well on the decline. I don't think it's like fallen totally into oblivion. But I also wouldn't be totally surprised. Actually, no, never mind. I was going to say, I wouldn't be surprised if these were the games that got Tigress fired. But no, because Katniss remembers seeing her as a stylist as a child. And she wouldn't have remembered Katniss's games. But I do think we are going to, if Tigress does appear, we are going to see something that alludes to the cause of like the deterioration of her relationship with Snow. We're just going to get like a little snippet, probably 1 to 2 lines, but I think it'll be enough.
Do you think then that she won't be Haymitch's stylist?
I think it's possible that she'll be Haymitch's stylist, but it might be a bit too much, like a little like too many like in references. But I will say fully possible. Not willing to say hard yes or no to that.
Right. Ooh. What about you, Bree? What do you think?
I'm gonna say she's a stylist, but not Haymitch's stylist.
Okay.
So we'll just see her, and we might hear a little thing, but this is like a soft little background.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like, is there anything specifically that like you just really want to see in the book?
I think it'd be a very interesting way to explore, because Katniss and Peeta are not unique in that like they're the first people that have ever attempted to defy the Capitol, defy the principle of the games. I think it's going to be very interesting to see the way the Capitol amends these actions in real time to send the message they wish to send to both the districts and citizens of the Capitol. I think it's going to be very compelling to see the way those messages are distorted. And I think the distortion of those messages is going to be a big focus.
Okay. What about you, Bree? Is there anything like you really want to see in this?
I don't know. Because like I'm just open to all of it, because like I know obviously this is like the biggest games, the 50th and all this shit's happening. But it's like, is it gonna feel different from the other books and movies?
Yes, I think that's the big concern, right? That it'll feel too formulaic, right?
Yeah, because like obviously I know it's gonna be a huge, thing, but like if it follows, the ballad where we see before, during, after, is that gonna feel too, like too much of a pattern?
Which is why, like, I mean, I totally understand it, like, not being multi-POV, but, like, that would be a very obvious distinction from the other one.
Because if we saw both in the games, Haymitch, whatever, but also outside the games with, like, we kind of saw that a little bit with, Ballad and, but, like, I don't know if it's generally following two storylines on opposite ends.
Right.
Like, what's going to make that distinct?
I also think the way that philosophy is going to be navigated in this book is going to be very compelling. Like the idea of like implicit submission is like centered around like the paradox, right? That the people hold the power, but not necessarily the authority. They are the ones that empower the authority.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be very interesting to see that contrast, how the Capitol manages to manufacture circumstances where the people of the districts are still allowing, I know allowing is kind of like a loaded word, because it's not like, they're just doing this of their own free volition, but again, for lack of a better term, allowing this to continuously keep happening, allowing them to preserve their power in the way they do.
Right.
Yeah, because we also know, again, with the Victor's Village, that Haymitch is going into this Victor's Village alone.
Yeah.
And his family's been slaughtered. Like, he now is distinguished from the rest of District 12.
Yeah.
And how is that going to change? Like, how is his relationship with his own people going to shift?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one.
Because
it got me thinking.
Well, I'm curious. I would love to see, personally, how the murder of his family and girlfriend went about. Because I mean, did they just have people come in and like, the guards or whatever, whoever they're called, just come in and like shoot them down?
Right.
Did they pin something on them and make it a big scene? Like, oh, you stole something, so
or did they like,
you're
made
executed.
It look natural cause, or like, oh, it's an accident,
Or did the District 12 people hand them over? Or did they go into like? I'm really curious how that happened.
Yes. Because Haymitch appears to be alienated from the overwhelming majority of District 12.
Yes.
He's not close with any particular member. He's regarded as this sort of anomaly. Like, people are kind of wary about him and outright disgusted by him at times.
Yeah.
His only true, and I'm hesitant to call her an ally, especially for the first book, his only true ally for a period is Effie. Or like the only
Yeah.
So I'm imagining that with that context, because Haymitch in book appears to be, friendly, charismatic, playful, all the qualities that are typically associated with people that have a decent number of friends. So I would imagine that however his family dies, it's very public, very violent. The people are fully aware that it's technically his quote unquote fault, and that the bulk of people in that district attempt to distance themselves because they don't know how far the capital is going to take this punishment.
Right. Oh. Like, yeah, I just want to know exactly. And I know we're going to know real soon, in a couple of days. But I am so curious about the downfall of Haymitch. Oh. Just his spiral. Because, yes, we know that his birthday lands on the day of the reaping, which is the 4th of July, which, again, is so spot on. Like, Susan Collins really spelled it out for us. But, and what you were saying, like, if we do see him coming and trying to be a mentor to all these different tributes, and did he at the beginning really try to save them, or I'm so curious, like, are
we're gonna see him with like spirit and like anger and just have this fight in him,
but then being disappointed, and I mean not disappointed, but then
seeing them die over and over, like
there's and like losing hope, right?
Oh,
and then like your thought on the symbolism of seeing him wake up the day of Katniss's game, or like the reaping, like and like him just like still being so like he doesn't know that things are about to change.
Oh,
yes. I'm very interested to see as well. I'm also curious to see if they'll establish parallels between the way that Haymitch grieves and the way that Katniss grieves. Just that sort of like catatonia, just because they're so similar as people.
Yeah. Interesting. And I'm also curious how connected Sunrise on the Reaping is going to be to Ballad. Like, we're talking about the connections between, Katniss and Haymitch and these original trilogy and this. But, like, how connected is it going to be to Ballad and what we know from Ballad? You know what I mean?
No, I don't know what you mean.
You don't know what I mean.
What do you mean?
So, like, I know make connections. Again, it's easiest with, I think, characters.
Yeah.
So you have Sejanus Snow and Lucy Gray. And there's some debate about Katniss and Peeta, and that, Katniss is like Lucy Gray, or no, wait, Katniss is actually like Sejanus, and Peeta's like Lucy Gray. And so I'm curious, like,
are we going to see those types of roles?
These archetypes in this new book, right? And what new versions of people, like, because we all see the relationships, because that's, real life. Like, we understand relationships as anybody. And so I think that's like the base of the Hunger Games, and what makes it so good is we can relate our own lives to these characters, or we know people and like these basic archetypes.
Yeah.
But when it goes down to it, it's like, no, we're actually more than just that.
Yes.
I'm just curious how they're gonna end the book, like without it being so like.
No, I think Lucky's got it.
That's what I'm saying, because like he's spiraled, he's down, he's an alcoholic, he's just nothing. Like,
it's not a happy ending.
It's not a happy ending. Yes. So like, what's gonna be that little like? All right, we don't want to depress everybody by the end. Just like,
I think you're spot on.
Yeah,
I think it is
No,
we'll see.
Because like, if it's not that, how are you gonna end? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, just from like. We write this just look at him, pull him up, and then just like and every day he wakes up on his birthday, and I drink it,
Well, I think Lucky's right, and I think of Gilmore Girls.
Okay,
I think of Year in the Life, because it ends with Mom, I'm pregnant, which makes you want to restart the show from the beginning of Gilmore Girls season 1. And like, I could see that being kind of utilized here, where it ends with Haymitch waking up on the reaping day, and then, okay, we're going now straight
rise
on the reaping, and then going straight to Katniss's Hunger Games.
Yeah.
Damn.
Plot twist, it just centers on him chasing his geese for a little bit, and then
like a little epilogue. It's like
epilogue
after Mockingjay.
Stop.
She would not do that for us, though.
No, would not. She would not leave us on such a happy note after that book.
Dang.
Okay, so coming to a close, I just want to question this. Now, we know that Susan Kong, she writes when she's got something to say.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
And I know, though, that the fans, we're all begging her to rate some specific games. You know, we have Finnick as a top one, Joanna, Mags, even Annie.
Oof.
I'm curious if you think, Lucky, do you think that she will continue writing in the Hunger Games universe? And maybe which one you think would be first?
I very, very firmly believe there is going to be a third installation, like a complete like prequel trilogy.
Okay.
I'm like 95% confident on this.
Ooh,
like I
like that
very,
confidence.
very convinced.
Yeah.
Now, whose games it'll center around? If it centers around games in of itself, because there's a possibility it won't. Like potential roots of the rebellion, things of that nature.
That's what I'm saying.
But if it centers,
that's what I'm waiting on.
If it centers on a game, I would think the most likely option is Phoenix. Most likely. Or if not Finnick, I think a completely unknown Victor.
Like, do you think that maybe potentially the 25th anniversary?
Ooh, that would be a good one. You see, there's a lot of very good things to explore. So I'm thinking personally right now, because we've gone from the 10th to the 50th, I think we're going to explore a game that's a little bit closer to like the actual formulation of the rebellion. They don't, I don't think they explicitly state this, but it's suggested that Plutarch is like actively looking at like winning, like, or tributes that have a high chance of winning, to see who could potentially be the face of this symbol. So I think it would be interesting, Phoenix, like in terms of just like deconstruction of the propaganda you were reared with, especially because in my opinion, I think it's almost guaranteed that Finnick volunteered because he's from a career district. Volunteered against everybody's advice at 14. But I'd also be interested to see just a book centered around like the roots of the rebellion, especially in the capital. Thinna Origins, I know, is a very popular idea that a lot of people would love to see. But I guess we'll find out shortly. I guess we'll find out after Sunrise releases. But I am very, very confident that there will be at least one more. Now, whether there'll be anything after that is tough to say, but at least one more.
Yeah, because like trilogy and then like Origins
trilogy.
Yeah, trilogy.
Ooh, do you think we're gonna get a trilogy after?
No.
Like what, Star Wars?
I think I'll support a peaceful like slice of like comic trilogy that shows like, you know, like Katniss learning to bake and a bow and arrow, but like just for like peace and love.
Yeah. Well, okay, but one of my like what's coming into the books that I'm reading now is this idea of what happens after you win
like
the war.
Rebuilding.
The rebuilding aspect.
That's a very good idea to explore, actually.
You know, because I see that in Mistborn a little bit, because that was kind of what Brandon Sanderson wanted to write in that. So so I could totally see. I mean, I definitely think that it's not on the top of her list at all, probably not even in her mind.
Right.
But potential, I could see that being a really interesting sequel book.
Right.
The rebuilding and who is in power, you know, and how are these powers differing from, you know, Snow and Coin and how all that came about. You know what I mean?
So either all the way what's going on now, how they're rebuilding it now, or the very beginning of what happened with the rebellion, where it was there, how we got into the games.
Yeah.
Beginning of the end.
We'll see.
We'll see indeed.
We'll see indeed.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Lucky.
Absolutely.
It was so
thank
amazing
you for having me.
to you.
Oh, it's been fabulous talking to you as well. Can't wait for the actual release of Reaping so we can discuss again.
Oh my gosh. Yes. So if y'all haven't heard about us yet, here at the TBR Podcast, we are going to be doing a book club on Sunrise on the Reaping. So check out our content calendar on our Instagram at the.tbr.podcast. We'll break down exactly what chapters we're going to be reading and discussing each week, every Friday, coming next week.
Yes.
So be sure to read along with us, share your thoughts, because I'm sure we're gonna have lots of thoughts.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So any other closing words, Bree?
Closing words.
Okay, let's see.
Oh, you already said that quote. I was gonna do like a nice little quote at the end.
No, say it again. It's a good quote.
Why do we have a winner? that quote?
Yeah.
Okay. Why do we have a winner? Hope
Start over.
Why do we have a winner? Hope. It is the only thing stronger than fear. A little hope is effective. A lot of hope is dangerous. A spark is fine as long as it's contained.
Mic drop. Oh.